On this Monday night, relief for an Indigenous community. An Ontario chemical plant accused of pumping out high levels of a dangerous chemical temporarily shuts down.
I'm happy, I'm scared, I'm a whole lot of things.
Why Israel's top intelligence chief is resigning, and grieving Jewish families adapt their Passover traditions.
No matter where we go, she's going to be with us.
Plus, what an independent review of the UN humanitarian agency in Gaza has concluded. And the opening round of Trump's criminal trial, the case the prosecution and defense are making.
Oh, damn.
And a train on fire rolls through London, Ontario, while a firefighting crew breaks through barriers in Alberta.
Global National with Donna Friesen.
Good evening and thanks for joining us. The people of a small Ontario First Nation are breathing a little easier. They have scored a temporary win against a major chemical company in southern Ontario. It says it is temporarily shutting down after extremely high levels of the cancer-causing chemical benzene were reported in the community just across the street. Dozens of people in Aamjiwnaang First Nation said they got sick last week. Some even went to hospital. Aamjiwnaang First Nation lies in what's called Chemical Valley on the south side of Sarnia, Ontario. The community is surrounded by dozens of large petrochemical plants within a 25-kilometre radius. Carolyn Jarvis has been reporting on the environmental concerns there for years and has our top story tonight.
When I saw it, I was having a hard time breathing.
Ada Lockridge was so overcome with emotion when she heard the news Saturday, she could barely speak.
I'm really happy somebody is finally listening. That plant has been leaking for a long time. I'm happy, I'm scared, I'm a whole lot of things.
The chemical plant INEOS Styrolution, which is located only meters from Aamjiwnaang First Nation, is temporarily shutting down. While there are other emitters in the area, Ontario's Ministry of the Environment and the First Nation have said INEOS is the primary source of benzene exposure on the north side of the community, a chemical which can cause cancer. At one point last week, the real-time one-hour benzene readings in North Aamjiwnaang reached more than 300 times the annual provincial limit.
It seems as if those in positions that could have Aamjiwnaang's health as their number one interest are weighing the scales between people and profit.
The ministry did issue a provincial order against the company Thursday to reduce emissions, but it was the fourth order in 5 years, while levels have kept climbing. What the First Nation wants now is a provincial inquiry, and for senior managers at Ontario's Ministry of the Environment to be suspended.
So those people need to be held accountable.
INEOS, which says it stays within its emissions limits, also says it will resume operations once maintenance and a mechanical issue are addressed.
INEOS Styrolutions should not be able to reopen without the full consent of Aamjiwnaang First Nation.
And once again today, Donna, a real-time one-hour benzene reading in North Aamjiwnaang reached 192 times the province's annual average limit. Aamjiwnaang told its workers to stay home and not to go into offices on the north side.
Carolyn, this sounds more like a reprieve than a solution for the First Nation. What are the next steps?
Well, the chief sent a stern letter to the chemical company Friday night, warning that if levels don't come down to the annual level of 0.45 or a level accepted by the community, they will seek an injunction in court against the company to force it to comply. Donna?
Okay, Carolyn Jarvis in Toronto, thank you. An independent review has found Israel has yet to provide proof of its claims that some UN agency staff in Gaza are involved with terrorist organizations. Israel had accused some employees of UNRWA, the UN Relief Works Agency in Gaza, of aiding and in some cases participating directly in the October 7th attacks. As a result, a number of countries halted funding to the humanitarian agency. Today's report says Israel has not provided supporting evidence for its allegations. It did say UNRWA must do more to improve its neutrality, staff vetting, and transparency. Local authorities in Gaza say nearly 300 bodies have been recovered in a mass grave in the southern Gaza city of Khan Yunis. Civil defense workers say the bodies were found in the compound of Nasser Hospital, which Israeli forces had raided earlier this month. Authorities say the bodies recovered are from one of at least 3 mass graves at the site. Israel says it raided that hospital because Hamas militants operated there. Medical staff and Hamas deny that. Israel's top military intelligence chief is resigning over failures surrounding the October 7th attack by Hamas. In a letter, Major General Aaron Haliva says the military intelligence directorate under his command did not live up to its mission. Hamas planned the highly coordinated assault for more than a year, building its battle plans from open source materials and conducting drills in Gaza. Israeli intelligence failed to detect any of it, and Hamas militants were able to attack Israeli communities for hours unchallenged. It was the deadliest one-day attack in Israel's history. More than 6 months later, it's believed more than 100 hostages are still being held in Gaza. It's unclear how many of them are still alive. For their loved ones, the waiting is agony. And for those who already know their loved ones were murdered, they're preparing to mark Passover, the Jewish festival of freedom, with somber hearts. Crystal Goomansingh reports.
Fresh sea air, the sun, and each other. The Solomons can't escape their reality, but they can chart a new course this Passover.
This year it was impossible to do the same, as it's not the same.
Having a big celebration and dinner for the holiday, it's a little bit too hard right now.
For 26 years, youngest daughter Hilly Solomon sat at their Seder table, a source of encouragement and laughter, a fashion designer who liked to be fashionably late.
In the little things we do, even putting the dishes in the dishwasher, we think about her. If we have a little shirt, it's too small, we think about her.
She was a light. She really was a light in this work.
How she left this world on October 7th is not something the family talks about. Instead, they've danced embracing her love of techno music. They held a run in her honor, and next year they'll be putting on a fashion show under Hilly's design label, Ashkara.
My personal struggle has been to come to terms with the fact that she was my best friend, and I've both lost my best friend and my little sister.
For us, our life changed forever, so we need to change with it.
No matter where we go, she's going to be with us. And in true Hilly nature, she brought us closer together even more.
With no way to be free from their grief, the Solomons have charted a new path. Rather than leaving an empty chair, they've left their Seder table. Crystal Goomansingh, Global News, and Bishkek, Israel.
Shortly after Russia's full-scale invasion of Ukraine in 2022, the Canadian government issued a slew of sanctions. They froze the assets of alleged Russian oligarchs, business people whose wealth is said to flow from their ties to the Kremlin. More than 2,900 individuals and entities in Russia, Belarus, Moldova, and Ukraine have been sanctioned by Canada. 9 people have since been removed from the list. And now Global News has learned another person is trying to get dropped. But as Jeff Semple reports, his plan may have backfired.
Oil tycoon Igor Makarov, one of Russia's wealthiest men, was once a major investor in Alberta's oil sands. But after Russia invaded Ukraine, Makarov scrambled to sell those shares. Then Canada froze his assets.
This individual has made billions of dollars thanks to the Putin regime.
Canadian officials said Makarov amassed his enormous wealth, an estimated $3 billion, through his close associations with top government officials while brokering non-transparent Russian Turkmen energy deals.
Going after people with ties to the Kremlin, first of all, is a way to stem the income that Russia has to prosecute its war.
Makarov is now appealing the sanctions in court. He denied the allegations and claimed he's provided humanitarian aid for Ukraine. Unfortunately, he said, my ability to continue to provide emergency financial assistance to Ukrainian refugees has been blocked because of the Canadian sanctions imposed against me.
These sorts of oligarchs, they haven't suddenly found a moral conscience when it comes to the war in Ukraine. They have directly, in fact, enabled and helped pave the way to this war.
Canadian officials argued that Makarov had never publicly denounced Putin or his war in Ukraine. Makarov denied that. In court documents, he says he's cut all ties with the Kremlin and renounced his Russian citizenship. And he also submitted a confidential letter. In an extraordinary move for an alleged Russian oligarch, he wrote, I want it to be made clear that I strongly oppose the Russian regime and its invasion of Ukraine. But he stressed his words must remain confidential, telling the court that publicly challenging Putin is dangerous.
And a private denunciation is meaningless. If you don't say it out loud, it doesn't count.
And it didn't work. The judge refused to seal his file. The court records, including his private denunciation, are now open to the public. Jeff Semple, Global News, Toronto.
Legal arguments have begun in the jury trial of former President Donald Trump. In opening statements, the prosecution framed the case as election fraud, saying Trump orchestrated a criminal scheme to corrupt the 2016 presidential election by hiding hush money payments to an adult film star. The defense told jurors it was nothing more than politics as usual and said there's nothing wrong with trying to influence an election. It's called democracy. Neethu Garcha is outside the courthouse in Manhattan. Neethu.
Donna, you can see the swarm of media behind me as today this historic trial really got underway.
This is done as election interference.
Former president and current Republican presidential candidate Donald Trump maintains this criminal trial is a sham.
Everybody knows it. I'm here instead of being able to be in Pennsylvania and Georgia and lots of other places campaigning, and it's very unfair.
Prosecutors argue payments to Trump's former lawyer Michael Cohen, labeled as legal fees, were actually reimbursements for hush money payments.
Trump's team is really going to make this about Michael Cohen and his credibility. And the DA's office, of course, has layers upon layers of evidence that they expect will back Michael Cohen up. And that's what I found surprising.
The defense portrayed Trump as a frugal businessman acting within legal bounds to influence elections. Outside, some New Yorkers express hopes for a just outcome.
I just hope that whatever is going on in the building behind us will show the country that justice will prevail no matter what the outcome.
Witness testimony also began Monday with the former publisher of the National Enquirer, David Pecker. Prosecutors say he agreed to help Trump's campaign target negative stories in a, quote, catch and kill operation. Pecker, a longtime friend of Trump, admitted to using checkbook journalism and paying for scoops. He's been granted immunity in exchange for his testimony.
I'm the leading candidate. I'm beating Biden. I'm beating the Republicans now. I have the nomination. And this is what they try to take me off the trail for. That checks being paid to a lawyer.
As prosecutors paint a damning picture of Trump's involvement in an alleged criminal conspiracy, defense seeks to undermine the credibility of key witnesses as both sides lay the groundwork for what is likely to be a fiercely contested trial, which is in the hands of a jury. Donna?
Lots more to come. Neethu Garcha in New York. Thanks. Toronto's police chief has asked the Ontario Provincial Police for an independent review after concerns were raised by a Superior Court judge during a murder trial. On Sunday, Umar Zamir was found not guilty of all criminal charges in the death of a Toronto police officer 3 years ago. Detective Constable Jeffrey Northrup died after being struck by Zamir's vehicle in a public parking lot. The officer in plain clothes had rushed toward the vehicle while investigating a stabbing. The review will look into officer testimony, conduct, procedures, practices, and training. The chief has also ordered an internal review into plainclothes policing procedures. In London, Ontario last night, a Canadian Pacific Kansas City train caught fire while rolling through town. Flames shot into the sky as the rail cars rolled through a residential area. People were told to stay inside and close their windows. No one was hurt and there were no dangerous goods on board the train. The Transportation Safety Board and the Canadian Pacific Police Service are investigating. Outrage and grief for a Montreal family. Coming up, they were sent the wrong body after their father died in Cuba. A Montreal woman is demanding answers after her father died during a trip to Cuba and the body sent back to Canada was not his. 68-year-old Faraj Jarjour had a heart attack while swimming with his daughter on March 22nd. Lifeguards in Cuba attempted CPR but could not revive him. The family has not seen his body since.
I understand it died, but the shock, it's when we received the body, it's not the body, it's my father. Where is my father? Until now, we don't know where is my father.
The family says they went to the Canadian consulate in Cuba and were told to return home. They paid $10,000 to ship the body back. In a statement, the Canadian government told Global News consular officials are in touch with Cuban authorities, but so far there are no answers on where Jarjour's body is. In the UK, British Prime Minister Rishi Sunak's bill to deport asylum seekers to Rwanda has passed tonight and will become law. Sunak says the first deportation flights will leave in 10 to 12 weeks.
Enough is enough. No more prevarication, no more delay. No ifs, no buts. These flights are going to Rwanda.
Sunak says there will be what he calls a regular rhythm of deportations from July onwards. The aim is to deter asylum seekers from entering the UK. The plan, pursued by 3 prime ministers over the past 2 years, had been blocked by a series of court rulings and opposition from those who believe it is inhumane. Tens of thousands of asylum seekers have reached Britain in recent years by crossing the English Channel in small boats on risky journeys organized by people smuggling gangs. Taking the heat off Earth ahead, can solar geoengineering help slow global warming? Most of the discussion around what to do about the climate emergency focuses on the need to reduce emissions. There is another approach. It's called solar geoengineering, using scientific methods to reflect the sun's rays and reduce heat on Earth. But it is unproven. Critics call it smoke and mirrors. Eric Sorensen explains what it is and why proponents believe it's an essential tool in fighting global warming.
One of the startling effects of the solar eclipse was the instantaneous cool down under totality.
The temperature has really dropped by more than 10 degrees.
Unlike the momentary effects under the moon's shadow, a fleet of mirrors in space could create a sustained period of cooling by deflecting a small percentage of the sun's intensity.
Large mirrors in the point between the sun and the earth.
Scientists say managing the sun's heat is gaining momentum as climate change gets worse.
If we are late on reducing our emissions, what else is out there?
What else? While cutting emissions and capturing and removing carbon are essential, say scientists, it's not enough. So experts are ramping up efforts in solar geoengineering.
A number of technologies in development that would allow us to reflect sunlight back out of the atmosphere before it reaches the ground.
Mirrors in space to deflect the sun's heat is one idea. Land-based reflectors is another. And then there is geoengineering in the atmosphere, such as injecting sulfur-based particles high in the stratosphere to reflect sunlight, or thinning high cirrus clouds that would allow trapped heat to escape, or brightening low marine clouds to make them thicker and better at reflecting the sun's heat. The University of Washington is trying to brighten clouds by spraying solutions of water and salt from the deck of an old aircraft carrier into the atmosphere.
It's really important. How it plays out in the climate system will depend on where you could brighten clouds and how much.
With high cirrus clouds, which trap more heat than they reflect, the aim is the opposite. Potentially drones could seed clouds to reduce their thickness and longevity. But the effects of thinning some clouds and thickening others are not fully understood.
While there are certain benefits from trying to cool the environment, we're not quite sure what kind of negative effects.
Yet there is no atmospheric study more controversial than stratospheric aerosol injection, dispersing sulfur-based particles that could cool the planet more quickly than other methods, but at what cost?
The technology is doable in many cases, but can we do this type of technology is a different question than should we do this type of technology.
Part 2 on solar geoengineering, a closer look at stratospheric aerosol injection. Donna?
All right, look forward to that. Eric Sorensen, thanks. Next, the all-female crew fighting fires in southern Alberta. Even in 2024, firefighting remains a profession dominated by men. That's why a recent weekend in Alberta is such a milestone. For the first time, Redwood Meadows, west of Calgary, was served by an all-female firefighting crew. Heather Urix-West reports on the women pushing the boundaries.
For Allison Archambault, suiting up in her fire kit is the realization of a lifelong dream.
This is a really special place for me. This is where I feel most myself.
A 7-year volunteer firefighter, Archambault is used to being surrounded by men. But in the last few years, Redwood Meadows Emergency Services has seen more women recruits, to a point where recently the area west of Calgary was served for a weekend shift by an all-female crew.
I don't know that I can describe how good it felt and how inspiring it felt.
But an all-female crew is even more remarkable when you consider how underrepresented women are in firefighting right across the country. A 2019 study found that while women represent about 20% of the country's military, paramedics, and police, less than 5% of the country's firefighters are women. While things have come a long way since Captain Jennifer Evans began wearing the gear 30 years ago.
I did have people outright tell me there's no place for women in the fire service, there's no place for you here.
There are still obstacles keeping women from joining the ranks.
It can be an intimidating field to join, I think, when you first of all look at it, because you do see that it is mostly men dominant.
But even if uniforms need to be tailored or gear modified to fit a female frame, the crew at Redwood Meadows are extinguishing every doubt that women don't belong on the front lines fighting the flames. Heather Urix-West, Global News, Redwood Meadows, Alberta.
That is Global National for this Monday. I'm Donna Friesen. Tonight's Your Canada is Astroton Lake in Elk Island National Park, Alberta. Thanks for watching and hope to see you here again tomorrow. Bye-bye.